From republic to empire, the making of a world. Long before any flags or banners carried the name Rome, there was a small cluster of huts on the Tiber River and a stubborn people who would not be satisfied with being small. They learned to build roads and bridges where others saw only marsh and hill. They bound themselves with law and oath, and they fought with a discipline forged by centuries of neighbors and wars. From those stubborn beginnings grew a republic of sharp rhetoric and sharper spears. Senators in togas arguing by day, legionaries drilling by dawn, and slowly, inexorably, an empire that would come to shade the whole known world. The story of Rome is not a single act, but a long accumulation. Conquest after conquest, alliances turned to provinces. Italian tribes turned into Roman citizens. Roman law turned into the architecture of government itself. By the 1st century BCE, Rome had done something no other polity had done in antiquity. It built a political system able to hold a vast mosaic of peoples: Greeks, Gauls, Jews, North Africans, Syrians, within one imperial roof. The resulting power was breathtaking. The Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative peace after Augustus, allowed trade to flourish, cities to swell, and ideas to travel. Roads stitched continents together. Grain ships from Egypt fed the city. Latin law standardized contracts from Hispania to Asia Minor. For a long time, Rome looked permanent. Yet permanence can hide fragility. The very scale that had made Rome great also created pressures no single city-state had ever faced. Armies were larger and costlier. Provincial administration multiplied. The need for steady tax revenue became a constant drumbeat. As emperors grew more powerful, the old republican checks thinned. Ambition concentrated, and court life became a place where power changed hands with intrigues, plots, and assassinations. Institutional mechanisms that had bound Romans together in the Republic now struggled to cope with imperial scale. Those tensions, administrative, fiscal, and social, would not break Rome overnight, but they planted seeds that would sprout in harder times. Across the 3rd century CE, the shocks began to accumulate. The empire tasted crisis. Multiple emperors in the space of a few years. Generals proclaiming themselves ruler in distant provinces, and frontier pressures multiplying as Germanic and steppe peoples pressed Rome's borders. Plagues reduced populations. Inflation and coin debasement eroded confidence in money. Local elites sometimes turned to local strongmen rather than Rome for protection. These were not merely military defeats, they were structural strains. When the empire's administrative machine was stretched thin, local defense suffered, and where defense failed, opportunity opened for new powers to take root. By the late 3rd and early 4th centuries, emperors like Diocletian recognized that old ways would not hold. He reorganized the empire's bureaucracy into smaller administrative units and shared rule with co-emperors to manage crises across great space. Diocletian's reforms stabilized administration temporarily, but also hardened divisions. East and West became more than convenience. They became administrative realities with their own armies, treasuries, and interests. Constantine followed with new accelerations. He moved the imperial center east to Byzantium, which would become Constantinople, embraced Christianity as a legitimizing force, and reshaped what Roman identity might mean in a changing world. These changes bought time and coherence, but they also altered the ideological and institutional fabric of the Roman order. The empire that had once been centered on Rome was no longer the same polity as before. Even at the empire's height, Rome's borders were contested. Ambitious rulers had extended Rome's bounds. Those same borders now needed more soldiers to hold them. The legions, previously citizen militia turned professional army, became dependent on pay and recruitment often drawn from barbarian-born auxiliaries. Military loyalty shifted. It was less to the Senate in Rome and more to the general who fed and paid you.
Over time, the soldier's identity could be more regional than Roman. That shift, slow, material, and human, mattered. When frontier pressure increased, the imperial center often lacked both the manpower and the political cohesion to respond with the old uniformity. Historians still debate what weight to give each cause. Some, following the classic approach of Edward Gibbon, emphasized internal decay and the loss of civic virtue as central. Others point to clear external triggers: movements of peoples in Northern and Eastern Europe, the rise of powerful warlike confederations, and crisis points when Gothic and Vandal incursions struck deep into imperial territory. Recent scholarship prefers to think in terms of a concatenation of causes: political instability, economic strain, shifting armies, and external pressures combined into the slow unweaving of imperial cohesion, rather than a single decisive blow. What matters for the story is that by the late 4th and early 5th centuries, the balance had shifted. Rome's capacity to govern its western provinces had weakened even as new, ambitious polities pressed into formerly Roman lands. This is the world into which the later protagonists of our story, emperors, generals, Gothic kings, Hunnic warlords, and shifting provincial elites, step. What looks in hindsight like a fall is, at the level of lives and politics, a messy, human, often local tale. Sieges and betrayals, alliances and marriages, grain shipments that did or did not arrive, coinage that failed to buy loyalty. It was not the sudden collapse of a civilization overnight. It was a long set of fractures that reached a breaking point in the 5th century of the Common Era. The crisis of the 3rd century. The glory of Rome, once unshakable, began to tremble. After centuries of unmatched power, the empire entered a dark age, a time historians later called the crisis of the 3rd century. It began in 235 AD, when the mighty emperor Severus Alexander was assassinated by his own troops. His death unleashed nearly 50 years of chaos, where emperors rose and fell faster than anyone could count. For the first time, the Roman Empire, once united and disciplined, was split by ambition, fear, and greed. A world without stability. The empire became a battlefield of rival generals. In less than 5 decades, more than 20 emperors claimed the throne, many lasting only months before being murdered or overthrown. The Praetorian Guard, once protectors of the emperor, became kingmakers, selling the throne to whoever offered the most gold. The Roman legions, once symbols of discipline and unity, began to fight each other. Soldiers no longer served Rome, they served their generals. Provinces broke away. The empire fractured into pieces. The Gallic Empire in the west, the Palmyrene Empire in the east, and the Italian heartland struggling to survive in between. Rome's once mighty strength was collapsing from within. Invasions and plague. As civil wars tore the empire apart, enemies from every direction saw an opportunity. The Goths, Franks, and Vandals invaded from the north. The Persians attacked from the east. Cities burned, trade routes fell silent, and the borders that once stretched from Britain to Egypt began to crumble. And as if war wasn't enough, a mysterious plague swept across the empire. Millions died. Fields went untended, harvests failed, and famine gripped the land. The population shrank, and even mighty legions could no longer fill their ranks. Economy in ruins. Gold and silver became scarce. The Roman currency, the denarius, lost its value as emperors debased it, mixing it with cheap metals to pay soldiers. Inflation soared. Bread that once cost 1 coin now cost 100. Citizens grew desperate. Merchants abandoned trade. Towns emptied. Rome, the eternal city, faced hunger for the first time in centuries. Faith and fear. Amidst the darkness, new beliefs began to rise. Christianity, once a persecuted faith, spread quietly among soldiers, slaves, and the poor. While emperors worshipped the old gods for victory, the common people turned to a faith that promised hope beyond death. In these uncertain times, religion became both a comfort and a threat, because every new faith challenged imperial authority. A fading dream. By the late 3rd century, it seemed the Roman Empire was doomed. The roads that once carried legions now carried refugees. The marble statues that once celebrated emperors now stood cracked and forgotten. Rome was still standing, but her spirit was broken. Yet, in the midst of despair, a new leader would rise, a soldier from the Balkans who would attempt to restore order and rebuild the empire's strength. His name was Diocletian, and his reforms would mark the beginning of a desperate attempt to save Rome from destruction.
The reforms of Diocletian, the last hope of Rome. When the empire seemed on the edge of collapse, out of the chaos rose a soldier, Gaius Aurelius Valerius Diocletianus, known to history as Diocletian. He wasn't born in Rome's marble palaces. He was the son of a freed slave from Dalmatia, a region far from the empire's glittering center. But Diocletian was a soldier of rare discipline and strategy, calm, intelligent, and unyielding. In 284 AD, after defeating the usurper Carinus, he was proclaimed emperor by his loyal troops. And so began one of the boldest rescue missions in Roman history. A soldier emperor's vision. Diocletian knew one thing clearly. Rome could not be ruled by one man anymore. The empire was simply too vast, stretching from the Atlantic to the deserts of Arabia, from Britain to the Nile. No single ruler could defend every frontier, govern every province, and control every general. So he made a decision no emperor before him had dared to make. He divided power to save power. The Tetrarchy, 4 emperors, 1 empire. In 293 AD, Diocletian created the Tetrarchy, or Rule of 4. He named himself as the Augustus of the East, ruling from Nicomedia, modern-day Turkey. His trusted ally, Maximian, became Augustus of the West, ruling from Milan. Beneath them, 2 younger co-emperors, Constantius Chlorus and Galerius, served as Caesars, responsible for assisting the senior emperors and defending frontiers. For the first time, the Roman Empire had 4 emperors working as one, a system built on discipline, loyalty, and shared responsibility. It was an attempt to bring order to the chaos. Rebuilding a broken system. Diocletian was not content with military reforms alone. He reorganized the empire's administration, dividing provinces into smaller, more manageable units called dioceses. Governors were given clear duties, taxes were systemized, and every resource, grain, gold, or manpower, was counted and controlled. He strengthened the borders by stationing legions along the frontiers and fortifying key cities. He expanded the army to almost 500,000 men, ensuring no enemy could invade without a wall of steel. The message was clear. Rome was no longer collapsing, it was regaining its discipline. The Iron Rule. But Diocletian's methods were harsh. To keep order, he ruled with absolute authority, like a living god rather than a mortal emperor. He adopted Eastern court rituals, demanded subjects bow before him, and surrounded himself with ceremony and gold. He believed fear was a tool of control, and he used it without hesitation. Taxes increased, workers were bound to their trades for life, and no one could change their profession or leave their hometown without imperial permission. For the poor, it felt like slavery under a different name. For Rome, it was the price of survival. The Great Persecution. Yet Diocletian's greatest failure was spiritual, not political. As Christianity continued to spread, Diocletian saw it as a threat to unity.
He believed one empire could not have two loyalties, Caesar and Christ.
In 303 AD, he launched the Great Persecution, ordering churches to be destroyed, scriptures burned, and believers executed. Thousands of Christians were tortured or killed. But instead of destroying the faith, the persecution made it stronger. In hidden catacombs and dark corners, Christianity survived and waited. The end of an era. By 305 AD, Diocletian's body was failing. He did something no Roman emperor had ever done before. He voluntarily abdicated the throne. He retired to his palace in Split, modern Croatia, to grow cabbages in peace. His system, the Tetrarchy, would soon be tested by ambition and betrayal. Because while Diocletian had built order, he had also created 4 thrones and 4 rivals. The unity he forged was already cracking, and soon Rome would be consumed again by the fires of civil war. Constantine the Great, the Cross and the Crown. When Diocletian stepped down, his great experiment, the Tetrarchy, didn't last long. What he built with order, ambition soon tore apart. The 4 emperors who once shared power began to turn on each other. Each wanted the crown. Each wanted to be the true ruler of Rome. And out of that storm of betrayal and war, one man would rise. The man history would call Constantine the Great. The rise of a legend. Constantine was the son of Constantius Chlorus, one of Diocletian's Caesars. Born in Nisus, modern-day Serbia, he grew up in the disciplined world of soldiers and strategy. He was tall, commanding, and intelligent, respected by the legions even before he wore the crown. When his father died in 306 AD in Britain, the troops at York, Eboracum, hailed Constantine as emperor. But there was a problem. The empire already had several emperors. What followed was another brutal civil war. Rome's throne once again became a prize for the strongest sword. The battle for Rome. Constantine's greatest rival was Maxentius, the son of Maximian. Maxentius controlled Rome itself, wealthy, powerful, and proud. But Constantine's armies marched toward Italy, determined to claim the heart of the empire. The decisive moment came in 312 AD, at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, just outside Rome. The night before the battle, Constantine reportedly saw a vision in the sky, a glowing cross above the sun, with the words, "In this sign you will conquer." He ordered his soldiers to paint the Christian symbol, the Chi Rho, on their shields. When the battle began, Constantine's smaller army fought fiercely. Maxentius's forces were driven back, and in panic they tried to retreat across the bridge, but it collapsed under them. Maxentius drowned in the Tiber River, and Constantine rode triumphantly into Rome. The Emperor of Faith. After his victory, Constantine did something that changed history forever. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting freedom of religion throughout the empire. For the first time, Christians were no longer persecuted. The cross that once marked suffering became a symbol of power and protection. Constantine saw Christianity not just as a faith, but as a force that could unify his empire. He built great churches, including the first St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. He gave wealth and privilege to Christian clergy, and he himself claimed divine favor, believing his victories were proof of heaven's will. A new capital, a new Rome. Constantine also knew that the old Rome had become too corrupt, too fragile, too exposed to attack. He looked eastward, where trade flourished and enemies could be watched closely. In 324 AD, he founded a new capital on the ancient city of Byzantium. He named it Constantinople, today's Istanbul. It was a city of marble and gold, built on faith and ambition,
and it would one day outlive the empire itself. The Council of Nicaea. In 325 AD, Constantine gathered bishops from across the empire for the Council of Nicaea, a meeting that defined core Christian beliefs and united the church under imperial guidance. It was a bold move. For the first time, religion and empire were tied together. The sword and the cross were now one. The legacy of Constantine. In his later years, Constantine ruled as a Christian emperor, though baptized only on his deathbed in 337 AD. He left behind a legacy that forever changed the Roman world. Under his reign, Christianity became the heart of imperial life. The capital shifted east to Constantinople. The empire found temporary unity and peace after centuries of chaos. But his success also carried a hidden cost. As the empire grew divided between East and West, the seeds of its final downfall were already being sown. Because when faith and politics blend, both become fragile.
The division of the empire. Two Romes, one fate.
When Constantine the Great died in 337 AD, his empire stood at its greatest size in centuries, unified under one faith and one ruler. But unity built on power rarely survives the death of the powerful. As Constantine's body lay in a golden coffin, his sons gathered to divide the world he had conquered. And with that began the slow unraveling of Rome's destiny. Brothers at war. Constantine had three sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. Each claimed a portion of the empire, promising to rule together as brothers. But ambition and suspicion soon turned them into enemies. Within a few years, Constantine II was killed in battle against his brother Constans. Later, Constans himself was overthrown by a usurper, leaving Constantius II the sole ruler. For a brief moment, the empire was united again, but at a terrible cost. The blood of family had been spilled for the throne of Rome.
Faith divides the empire. While the sword tore Rome apart, faith began to do the same. Constantine had made Christianity legal, but now Christians themselves were divided. Different beliefs about the nature of Christ led to fierce disputes between Arians and Orthodox Christians. Emperors tried to settle these debates, but each took sides, turning faith into politics. Temples closed, philosophers were silenced, and the ancient gods of Rome faded into memory. The empire that once celebrated all religions now struggled to tolerate one. Julian the Apostate. Then came an empire unlike any before him, Julian, known later as the Apostate. He tried to undo Constantine's legacy and restore the old pagan gods. Julian reopened temples, revived ancient rituals, and mocked the bishops who once stood proud under imperial favor. But his dream was short-lived. In 363 AD, during a failed campaign against Persia, Julian was mortally wounded. As he lay dying, he whispered to the heavens, "You have won, O Galilean." Christianity had triumphed forever. The rise of Theodosius. After Julian's death, the empire's future hung in the balance until a new leader rose, Theodosius I, a man of faith, strength, and vision. Crowned emperor in 379 AD, he faced a broken empire, barbarian invasions, financial ruin, and internal conflict. Theodosius fought fiercely to restore order, but he also made a defining choice. He declared Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire in 380 AD through the Edict of Thessalonica. From that moment on, worship of the old gods was banned. Temples were closed, statues destroyed, and pagan festivals turned into Christian celebrations. Rome, once the home of Jupiter and Mars, now belonged to the cross. The final division. In 395 AD, as Theodosius lay dying, he made one last act that changed history forever. he divided the empire between his two sons. Honorius received the Western Roman Empire, ruled from Rome and later Ravenna. Arcadius received the Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople. What began as a temporary arrangement became permanent. Two capitals, two governments, two Romes. The Eastern Empire, rich and well defended, would thrive for 1,000 years more. But the West, weak, poor, and surrounded by enemies, was heading toward its doom. The glory of ancient Rome was fading, and the shadows of the Dark Ages were drawing near. The barbarian storm, the invasions that shook Rome. The death of Theodosius I in 395 AD marked the last moment of a united Roman Empire. After that, the ancient world began to tremble. Across the northern frontiers, vast movements of people were stirring, tribes long feared by Rome, and soon they would bring the empire to its knees. The age of the barbarian storm had begun. The Goths on the move. For centuries, Rome had fought the Goths, a proud, warlike people from beyond the Danube River. But now, a new terror had appeared behind them, the Huns, fierce horsemen from the steppes of Central Asia. Driven by fear of these nomadic warriors, the Goths, men, women, and children, fled south, begging for refuge inside Roman borders. The emperor in the east allowed them to cross, but corruption among Roman officials turned compassion into cruelty. They starved, they were extorted, and finally, they rebelled. In 378 AD, the Goths crushed a Roman army at the Battle of Adrianople, killing Emperor Valens himself. It was one of Rome's worst defeats, a warning that the legions were no longer invincible. Alaric the Bold. From this chaos rose a new leader, Alaric, king of the Visigoths. He was not a savage brute. He was a former Roman soldier, trained in their discipline, fluent in their language. But he and his people had been betrayed by the empire too many times. Now, Alaric sought not destruction, but justice and recognition. He wanted land, honor, and a place for his people within Rome. But the empire was too proud to grant it. When diplomacy failed, Alaric chose war. The March on Rome. The Western Empire, under young and weak emperors, could not resist. Its real power lay with generals and corrupt officials who feared each other more than the enemy. In 401 AD, Alaric invaded Italy itself. The Romans were shocked. For centuries, no enemy had dared to march toward the Eternal City. Though he was pushed back temporarily, Alaric returned again and again. Each time, he demanded peace in exchange for land and gold. Each time, Rome refused. Meanwhile, the empire was collapsing from within. The treasury was empty, legions were unpaid, and rival generals fought for control, while the Goths closed in. The sack of Rome, 410 AD. Finally, in 410 AD, Alaric's patience ended. His army surrounded Rome, starving the greatest city on earth. The Senate pleaded for mercy, but the Emperor Honorius, hiding in Ravenna, refused to help. After months of siege, the city gates were opened, and for the first time in 800 years, Rome fell to a foreign army. The Visigoths entered quietly, not as destroyers, but as victors, claiming what they were denied. They looted palaces, took gold, and freed slaves, but they did not burn the city. Even in conquest, Alaric showed restraint. 3 days later, the Goths left the city in silence, carrying their treasure and their wounded king. Alaric died shortly after, buried in secret beneath a river in southern Italy. His grave forever lost, his story forever remembered. The shock of the world.
When news reached the empire, disbelief turned to despair. Saint Jerome wrote, "The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken." The unthinkable had happened. Rome, the eternal city, had fallen. Though the empire still existed in name, its spirit was shattered. The world was changing, no longer ruled by emperors and legions, but by faith, tribes, and chaos. The Roman dream was dying. The empire's division, East versus West. After Theodosius's death in 395 AD, the Roman Empire was split permanently between his two sons, Honorius in the west and Arcadius in the east. This division, meant to make governance easier, instead sowed the seeds of destruction. The east, centered in Constantinople, was rich, fortified, and culturally vibrant. The west, however, was exhausted, impoverished, and facing constant barbarian invasions. In the Western Empire, Rome itself no longer held power. The emperors ruled from Ravenna, protected by swamps and walls. Meanwhile, the Eastern Empire's capital, Constantinople, became the new jewel of the Mediterranean. This imbalance would eventually save the East and doom the West. The Visigoths, under their leader Alaric, had once served Rome, but after betrayal and mistreatment, they turned against it. In 410 AD, after years of siege, Alaric and his warriors entered Rome itself. For 3 days, they looted the Eternal City, something not seen in 800 years. The shock spread across the world. The invincible Rome had fallen to barbarians. In Constantinople, the Eastern rulers watched with fear but also relief. The West's troubles bought them time. Trade, culture, and science continued to flourish in the East. But in the West, chaos reigned. Emperors rose and fell in quick succession. The army was filled with mercenaries, and loyalty to Rome faded. The division between East and West was more than political. It was cultural. The East spoke Greek and embraced Christianity deeply. The West clung to Latin traditions and the remnants of pagan Rome. This growing divide meant that when the West was collapsing, the East often stood aside, unwilling to sacrifice its strength for a lost cause. Yet, amidst the ruins, there were still voices that believed Rome could rise again. Generals like Aetius, who held the empire together against impossible odds, and Valentinian III, a weak emperor but symbolic of Rome's last flicker of power. The empire had split, but history had not yet decided which half would survive the longest. Attila the Hun, the scourge of God. In the mid-5th century, a new and terrifying power emerged from the east, the Huns, led by the legendary Attila. To the Romans, he was the scourge of God, a punishment for their sins and corruption. His riders swept through Europe like a storm, leaving destruction in their wake. At first, both the Eastern and Western empires tried to buy peace through gold and treaties. But Attila's hunger was unending. In 451 AD, his vast army crossed into Gaul, modern France, threatening to annihilate Roman and Gothic settlements alike. Here, for the last time, Rome united with its old enemies to face a common threat. The Roman general Aetius, the last of the Romans, formed an alliance with the Visigoths under King Theodoric. On the Catalonian plains, one of the bloodiest battles in ancient history erupted. Tens of thousands died. The earth shook with the clash of swords, spears, and hooves. In the end, Attila was forced to retreat, but the victory came at a heavy price. The Roman army was shattered, and its allies soon turned against each other. A year later, Attila returned, invading Italy itself. Rome trembled once again. This time, there was no army left to resist him. But then came a legendary meeting. Pope Leo I rode out to meet Attila. No one knows what words passed between them, but Attila suddenly turned back, sparing Rome. Some said he saw a vision of divine angels. Others claimed he was struck by illness or fear of famine. Whatever the truth, Rome survived, but barely. Attila died soon after, and his empire dissolved. Yet his shadow lingered, proof that Rome's enemies no longer feared her might. The Western Roman Empire had survived the Huns, but not for long. Its walls still stood, but its spirit was fading fast. The heart of the empire, once filled with ambition and pride, now beat weakly in the darkening twilight of history. The fall of the Western Roman Empire. The year was 476 AD, a date that would echo through history. For centuries, Rome had ruled the known world. But now, its empire was only a shadow, held together by memory rather than power. Italy itself was no longer truly Roman. The legions that guarded it were mostly Germanic mercenaries, men who fought not for loyalty, but for payment. When their wages were withheld, rebellion spread. At the center of it all stood one man, Odoacer, a Germanic soldier and leader among the Foederati, barbarian troops serving Rome. The young Emperor Romulus Augustulus, barely a teenager, had been placed on the throne by his father, the general Orestes. But his rule was only symbolic. Rome was an empire in name only. Orestes refused to meet Odoacer's demands for land, and in response, Odoacer's forces marched on Ravenna, the imperial capital. The city fell easily. Orestes was executed. Odoacer spared the young Romulus, sending him into quiet exile, a mercy for the last emperor of Rome. Then, in a symbolic act that marked the true end of an era, Odoacer sent the imperial regalia, the crown and the purple robes, to Constantinople, declaring that there would be no more emperors in the West. The Roman Empire in the West was finished. Its end did not come through one grand battle, but through slow decay, exhaustion, and betrayal from within. The once great empire that had built roads across continents, raised monuments that touched the sky, and ruled nations from Britain to Egypt, now fell silent. The eternal city, which had once commanded kings, now lay at the mercy of foreign rulers. Yet in the East, the Byzantine Empire, the continuation of Rome, still stood strong. In Constantinople, emperors like Zeno and Anastasius carried the Roman legacy forward, even as Europe entered the Dark Ages. For scholars and poets of later centuries, 476 AD was not just a date, it was a symbol. A reminder that even the mightiest power can crumble from within, not by the sword of the enemy, but by the weakness of its own heart. The Western Roman Empire was gone, but its laws, architecture, and spirit would shape the world for millennia to come. The legacy of Rome, a civilization that never truly died. Even after the empire's fall, Rome's legacy endured, woven into the very fabric of Western civilization. The barbarians who conquered its lands did not destroy its culture. Instead, they adopted it. The Latin language evolved into Italian, French, and Spanish. Roman law became the foundation of justice in Europe. The Christian Church, once persecuted by Roman emperors, became the empire's spiritual heir. From the ruins of Rome rose the power of the papacy, centered in the Vatican, guiding kings, shaping nations, and carrying forward the memory of Rome's authority. In the East, Constantinople thrived for another 1,000 years, preserving the knowledge, art, and science of the ancient world. Its scholars would later help ignite the Renaissance, a rebirth of Roman and Greek learning. Even today, echoes of Rome remain everywhere, in architecture, governance, and language. The word Senate, the design of domes and arches, the idea of citizenship, all trace back to Rome. Historians often say that empires rise and fall, but Rome never truly died. It transformed, from marble and iron into ideas and faith. The Roman dream of unity, order, and civilization continued to inspire kingdoms, republics, and nations across the centuries. And so, the story of the Roman Empire's fall is not just one of collapse. It's a story of transformation, of how greatness can fade, yet still leave behind a light that guides the world. For as long as humanity values law, reason, and ambition, Rome still lives.